Welcome to Obstacle Running Adventures.
Over the last 7 years, we have consistently released weekly episodes focusing on
obstacle course racing, running, and other adventures.
You'll hear interviews, event recaps, conversations about our sport,
quick news updates about happenings in our community.
And now, here are your hosts,
Standing on the corner,
Michael Stefano and Caitlin Ritter.
Hey guys, it's Michael Stefano.
And Caitlin Ritter. And Michael, how was your weekend?
I got better because I'm starting to get rid of poison ivy that I got last Friday.
Saturday?
Oh yeah. Well, it hasn't been fun with that. It's my yearly poison ivy thing, and you got it pretty bad too.
I would think to say I have poison ivy worse than you.
Yes, you also wore shorts.
Okay, I've never gotten poison ivy while mowing the lawn before. This is the first time, and I've worn shorts for the last 4 years mowing the lawn.
Yeah. Well, not anymore. I think you're getting more allergic, and yeah.
Both my legs are covered in weeping poison ivy.
Yes. Pretty gross. Let's give a shout out to our sponsors.
Shout out Mudgear. Use code ADVENTURE for 15% off your next Mudgear purchase, and Caterpie. Use code OCRReport20 for 20% off your next Caterpie purchase.
Perfect. Let's shout out the $5+ Patreon supporters.
Jason Dupree, Samantha Thompson, Bradley Keel, Charlotte Engelman, Aaron Grindstaff, Laura and Stephen Ritter, Hank and Arlene Stefano, Kenny West, Cheryl Miller, Jessica Johnson, Nick Riker, Christopher Hoover, Kevin Gregory Jr., Evan Irick, Brent George, Logan Nagel, Asa Coddington, and Seth Runderknech.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for the support, and also to the OCR Report for being a great home for us on the internet.
And to Will Hicks,
the Podfather. Check it out over at theocrreport.com. I'm trying to do some more work with them, some more like short video projects. A while ago, I was doing some articles written up, and those just didn't end up getting published. So I'm like, you know what? How else can I, do some work with them too? So I created a video. It ended up being double the length it should have been. So I've split it into two, and hopefully they'll be posting that in the next week or so. We will see.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know you did that.
Yeah, I've been very, very busy. Let's give a shout out to our sponsored athletes.
Javier Escobar, Kelly Sullivan, Ryan Brizzalara, and Joshua Reed.
Poll results. Did we do a poll?
I did do a poll.
Perfect.
I hope you guys realize that a lot of time the polls we post on the Instagram are polls because Mike and I can't agree on something. So my poll this week was, do you consider listening to an audiobook the same as reading an actual book? And 33% of voters said yes, and 67% of voters said no.
Okay, so I understand you think it's some sort of gatekeeping. I do think that it gives you the same amount of information, but they are two different verbs of listening and reading.
But you're still, gaining the knowledge of the story.
Yes, but it's a different skill.
Okay.
Completely different skill.
But, I would say I've listened to 7. I've listened to 8 audiobooks this year, and I've read 1 book. I never would have read those. I wouldn't have consumed those 8 books if it wasn't audio.
That's nice. Yeah, you consumed them. But if you were to say that you read 8 books or whatever, that's a lie. You did not read 8 books. I
consumed 8 books.
Yes. Or you could just say you listened to 8 books. That's perfectly fine. I don't actually listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I think that's it's like a brother to podcasting. I think it's pretty great, but yeah, it's not, you did not read those books.
I consumed the books.
Books.
I think I'm a better audio
Yeah, it's
person.
more convenient for people. You can't read a book while you're driving in your commute. I'm all for audiobooks, but don't say that you read a book.
But if somebody asked me how many books I've read this year, I would say 8.
Okay. Yeah, I just feel like it's like a podium. It just needs that additional I listened to this many books, which is fine. I would argue just as passionately with someone that said that listening to a book wasn't as important as reading a book. You're still getting the same information, but it's just you're doing the different things, a different verb.
I just think if you're consuming the book, good for you.
Oh yeah, I agreed. But it's not reading a book. Meme of the week. I wasn't sure if I was going to use it as a quote because it's pretty much a quote with a visual medium. So I found it. Caitlin, you have to describe it.
Oh goodness. So it's 3 pine trees and a little baby non-pine tree. And it says, there are moments to divide your life into before, and then the next panel says, and after, and the pine trees are cut down, and the non-pine tree is sad. And then the next panel is he's still sad. It says, no matter how much time passes, things will never be the same. And then the next panel is the non-pine tree crying, thinking about his 3 pine tree friends. And it says, it's okay to miss the safety of before and to question why something so awful happened. And then the next panel, the final panel, is the non-pine tree. It has a little happy face, and there's an owl, there's a squirrel, there's a bird with eggs in it in the nest saying, but leave room in your heart for the biggest question. What will you do with your after?
Yeah. I thought that was a sweet little thing that, not so much a typical meme that we do, but we haven't done a meme in a while, and that's just what I had, so.
What kind of tree is that?
Just, I don't know, a generic tree, I think.
A non-pine tree?
Yeah, I think. Let's get to some quick news, starting with CAB Sports not working with Tough Mudder anymore. So CAB Sports was the group that put on the big Alula Tough Mudder, the Tough Mudder Infinity, and they posted...
With all the money?
Yes. Following a hugely memorable 8-year period of hosting our events in the MENA region, CAB Sports today says goodbye. Our events have provided us with some wonderful memories, and to see the number of participants grow so significantly during that time is a testament to fantastic work produced by everybody connected to the brand. It just talks about how they've been, important in the past, this and that. If you want to work with them in the sports, come contact them, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, that's a bummer because they just had a very big event and it got a lot of attention and poof, now it's not going too hot. Kind of like Hildervat back in the day too.
I forgot about Hildervat.
Most people have, unfortunately. In some optimistic news, also more Middle East news, Hannibal Race put out a post saying, you guys have been waiting for a race announcement? Well, guess what? To celebrate our 10-year anniversary, we're announcing 2 races to all Hannibal warriors in... I'm not too sure what that flag is, but it says Qatar, so I'm assuming it's Qatar. Get ready for this race at Le Plateau de Bakash. This September 1st. Registration starts on June 5th, so don't forget to set your reminders. As for the second race, are you ready for Qatar? Oh, sorry, I have no idea where the first one is. The second one is Qatar for your first Hannibal race. Not only is it our first race in breathtaking Qatar, but it's our first urban night edition race. So come to the race glowing. And that sounds really cool. We've done lots of urban
fun.
Races, Urban Raid, all those back in the day, like 2013, 2014. But a night urban race sounds really, really fun.
If they were closer, we would go.
Yes, it's a little bit more than a drive. Next up, I got this news somewhat live as it was happening because Javier put out some videos. But this comes to us from Christian Brown Johnson.
Him and his wife, Kelsey, got married on June 7th.
Yeah, it says Mr. and Mrs. Johnson. So congratulations to them. I had the privilege of meeting her a little bit at World's Toughest Moto last year. And just, it was really cute seeing the video, the picture of Javier, Elliot Reeb, and I think it was Dr. Crazy Jake, all his best men, which is pretty cool.
So cute.
Yeah.
Isn't married life great?
Mm-hmm.
That did not sound sincere.
Next up, Matt Novakovic. Posted,
I forgot about him.
Yeah, a lot of people have. The bear came out of hibernation thanks to Yancey Culp after intoxicating influence, as he called me 2 days ago and said, come to Austin from Anchorage really quick and let DecaFit kick your butt. He said he was pretty humbled by the intensity of this 10-stage event with 5K of running. He got 11th overall, winning the age group and qualifying for World Championships in Orlando at the end of the year. So congratulations to him for getting back out there. And now we have a whole bunch of podiums, starting with DecaFit Austin.
For the women, in 3rd place, Allison Morrison. In 2nd place, Allison Outlaw. And in 1st place, Alex Walker. For the men, in 3rd place, Isaac Sanderson. In 2nd place, Glenn Race. And in 1st place, Nicholas Riker.
Perfect. Next up is the Spartan Cincinnati Ultra.
For the men, in 3rd place, Marik Sawicki. In 2nd place, Andrew Chapman. And in 1st place, Rocky Sinfroka.
And for the ladies?
In 3rd place, Amanda Steffen. In 2nd place, Dorothea West. And in 1st place, Yara Alves.
Nice. Next up is the Cincinnati Beast.
For the men, in 3rd place, Addison Coles. In 2nd place, Derek Steele. And in 1st place, Aaron Lake. And for the ladies, in 3rd place, Callie Siddell. In 2nd place, Elise McClintic.
Yep.
And in 1st place, Sabrina Bahiger.
And going back to the East Coast, we have the Tri-State New York Super.
In 3rd place, Alex Hagen-Weiss. Weiss. In second place, Adam Beach. And in first place, Brent Trail.
Yeah, we know all those people. For some reason, I keep forgetting that event happens every single year. I've never been to Bethel.
And for the women, in third place, Allison McLeod. Alyssa, sorry. In third place, Alyssa McLeod. In second place, Taylor Phoebus. And in first place, Cassandra Gill.
I'm going to have ice cream tonight in your honor, Cassandra.
And for the
going back to Cincinnati for the Super.
In third place for men, Joe Stoller. In second place, Aaron Lake. And in first place, Addison Coles. And for the women, in third place, Carrie Beckham. And in second place, Kelly Siddell. And in first place, Elise McClintock.
Perfect. Going back again to Tri-State. This is just the order that the OSU report put them up in, so I do it in this order so I make sure I don't miss any. The Tri-State New York Sprint.
In third place for men, Brent Trail. In second place, Alex Hagen-Weiss. And in first place, Adam Beach. And for the ladies, in third place, Sarah Korba. In second place, Taylor Phoebus. And in first place, Cassandra Gill.
Shout out to Sarah Korba for making the best cake pops. Have you seen some of the videos?
No.
Oh my god. Okay, we're gonna pause this real quick to look at this.
I didn't know she was a baker.
Yeah, I don't know. It's something that she's been posting for the past while, and they just look amazing. I can't speak to how good they taste, but they look incredible.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, this one's little baseballs and New York Yankee logo ones. And this one's little baby Grogu and Chewbacca ones.
Those are adorable.
So many. And all of them look very, very impressive. Just good attention to detail. But yeah, also third place. So good for you with that too. And last up for our podiums, we have the Hyrox World Championships podium, which I do understand there was some difficulties with penalties and this and that. So what we have as of now, fourth place shutting her out because I guess initially she got second place. But fourth was Viola Oberlander. Third place was Vivian Tafudo. Second place, Lauren Weeks. And in first place, Meg Jacoby by a pretty demanding lead. And for the men, in third place, James Kelly. In second place, Michael Sandbach. And in first place, Alexander Ronkovic. So congratulations to everyone there. Secret links, there's 5 of them down below, so go and check those out. But let's get to what this episode is all about. So in the past, we interviewed Des Linden when her book Choosing to Run came out. And in doing so, we opened up options for future book-related interviews.
Which is awesome.
Yes. Gwendolyn Bound's publicist, Brianna Kuselik, I believe, reached out to us back in April, and it took us a little while to find a time to release a potential episode with her. Luckily, we made room this week, and Caitlin interviewed her for the show. So, Caitlin, what do you have to say about the interview before we get to it?
I have to say, personally, I think it's one of the best interviews that I've ever done.
Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome. I definitely enjoyed listening and editing it. And we'll talk a little bit more when we get back. But here's the interview with Gwendolyn Bounds.
She goes by Wendy.
Yes.
Let's just start out super simple with your name and where you're from.
Sure. I'm Gwendolyn Bounds. People call me Wendy Bounds. I'm originally from North Carolina. You might hear the accent come out during the conversation, but I live now in the Hudson Valley in New York.
Awesome. And before we really even get started, you recently wrote a novel called Not Too Late.
Yes, it's not too late. It's actually nonfiction, so Not Too Late's right behind me, The Power of Pushing Limits at Any Age. And it is a story about my midlife foray into something you know quite well, which is the sport of obstacle course racing, and the transformation that happened during that. But more importantly, it's a book for anybody out there who has reached a point in life where they feel like things have sort of gotten the same, that they need to shake things up, and what it's like to embrace something new and very hard. And I interview a lot of scientists and doctors and other experts, performance experts out there to help us do it.
Your wide range of knowledge, and I was looking at the end of the book and like your references, I was blown away with the extent of research that went into this story. What inspired you to even pick up the pen and start writing?
Well, first of all, thank you for noticing the endnotes and the research. They're among some of the hardest things that you do in a book, right? There's a lot of like blood, sweat, and tears at the end of it. So you get big points for even having looked at them. I don't know that many people do. I'm a journalist. That's my career. I'm a journalist and I work in media by trade. So I've always been a writer. This is my second book. And I set out to write this book because of some things I was hinting at before, which is that I think when we reach midlife, I'm an age group racer, and I race now in the 50 to 54 category. I can barely believe I'm saying it, but that is the truth. We start to think we're kind of fully baked as people. I think this can start to happen to us, honestly, Caitlin, in our 30s and 40s, right? We know what we're good at. We know what we think we're not good at. And it really pigeonholes us into a very narrow band of sort of thinking about our life and engaging with things. And we can get into this story, but I had never been a competitive athlete. I was that skinny, scrawny kid growing up who sat on the bench and passed out the water and, really wanted to be part of the girls who were on the teams who were most competitive, but I just wasn't really wired that way. And it wasn't until age 45 that I got out of that comfort zone of myself. And as a writer and just a journalist, decided to write this book based on what would be a 6-year odyssey of my learning and trying to become a competitive obstacle course racer. So that was really the catalyst, and we can talk more about the specifics that got into that. But that's the high level view.
That's awesome. And I just turned 31, and I feel like I'm at like a crossroads, right? Like I have friends who are having children on purpose, and I have friends that are at the bars till 3 a.m. And Mike and I don't have any children of our own, but I'm always like, it's such an interesting point in life because it's like you could do two totally different things. And the fact that you were able to put it down and put it in words for people of all ages to read is something that I think will be very helpful to many people.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I remember being your age and then being at that same crossroads. And I think you all probably have a very interesting perspective that's different from a lot of your peers, and that you're a part of the fitness community, right? And you host this podcast. And so you probably have a little bit of I don't know you personally, but I know anyone who's going to be in the sport has to have some dedication and sense of discipline. And so that probably gives you an advantage over picking your next path. But you don't know what that's going to be. And that's both very exciting, right, in many ways, and daunting. So I remember what that's like. And I feel pretty sure you'll do something pretty interesting if you're already in obstacle course racing.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. So let's get back to the book. Something that really stood out to me. I grew up in northern New Jersey. I was in 3rd grade when the attacks on the World Trade Center happened. And just when I was reading your story and you had an apartment in Manhattan and 9/11 hits, and I just cannot imagine the experience that was for you. And I like that later in your book, you talk about trauma, how it's either a big T or a little t. And I immediately thought back to your experience of that September 11th day and walking out of your apartment building in Manhattan. How do you think those 15 minutes of your life impacted the rest of your life?
So you're a very careful reader. Big points for that. Like you've clearly gotten some of the nitty gritty out of the book. No surprise. You said you're a teacher, right?
I am. Yeah.
Yep, no surprise. So it's interesting that you ask about. So my first book, actually called Little Chapel on the River, it actually opens on the day of the September 11th, 2001 terrorist attacks, when I lived next door to the World Trade Center towers, and what followed after that day, and that was as pivotal a moment in my life as my decision to embrace obstacle course racing. Like when I think of 2 milestones as I have, grown older, like those are really it. And 9/11, I ended up, I left New York City. I moved into the country. I took a leave of absence from my job at the Wall Street Journal, where I was a reporter. I wrote a book, which is that book, Little Chapel on the River, about this Irish pub and country store and all the amazing, interesting people that came in and out of it, and my immersion in that world and what it was like being with that cast of characters in this pub and bar. So that was really my first book, but it reset what my priorities are, right? I was about your age at the time when this happened. And when you talk about choosing different life paths, I think that really set me on a very different life path of recognizing, that we, and this is, I think all of us know this now from different points in history in our own lives, like we don't have a lot of say over like when and how we're going to leave the earth, right? Like anything can happen at any time. So that was my first wake up call. And, the second wake up call really was when I was at a dinner party and I overheard this man, he was well into his cups of gin at that point, Caitlin, ask a little girl there, what do you want to be when you grow up? Mm-hmm. And I remember and this is in the book, sitting there and thinking like, boy, nobody asks you that anymore when you start to get into your 40s. They even stop asking you probably in your 30s. And the truth of the matter is we kind of stop asking ourselves. We think, I am a doctor, I am an artist, or I am an author, I am a journalist, I am a teacher. But we then pigeonhole ourselves into being that. And I woke up the next day and I got on the computer and I still, Caitlin, have no idea why I Googled this, but I Googled what are the hardest things you can do? And the algorithm threw out to me, what are the hardest physical things you can do? Right. I dropped down to this weird thing called Spartan race. And I was like, who would ever do something like this? Crawl under barbed wire, climb a rope, carry heavy things. Mm-hmm. But that truly was what set me off on this journey to do something that seemed so out there and incredibly difficult. And led to, some other pivotal life moments that you have alluded to that are in the book.
Absolutely. And it's funny too, because we all find the sport differently, right? My husband and co-host Mike started it because it was like a Facebook ad and he sent it to his like friend that works out and is into fitness and was like, oh, you should do this. And his friend replied back with like, no, we should do this. Like, that's something we can both do. And then that was before I met Mike. And then when Mike and I first met, he's like, oh, I'm running this Spartan race next summer. Like, you should join me. And I was like, still trying to like impress him at that point. And I was
right.
I was like, I will run a Spartan race with you. And it's just like the trajectory of my life, like, and your life as well, could have been so different without finding the sport.
You did it for love, my friend. I like that. Nice. And you're still together. See, it works.
Yes. You never know.
You never know. But look, I mean, truly, you've just hit on something, right? Like, you and your husband, Mike, like you shared something. There was something in both of your DNA that connected over this sport, right? And not everybody understands it, but I think a lot more people understand it than you would think. I mean, we know that from the millions of people who engage in this sport. And so many people I spoke to, both for my book and just the other racers on the course, and I know you hear this all the time, like you finished that first race. And for me, mine was at Citi Field and it was an open race. Like I wasn't really competing. I just wanted to like not die.
Right.
My DNA changed. Something in my DNA changed when I crossed that finish line. And I think people have had very similar experiences. Sounds like you did. And you also got a husband out of it. So congratulations. That's like better than a finisher medal for sure. But, I think that's a similar thread we all have who are in this community. And I'm so grateful to have met so many people who've shared their stories.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And it's one of those things like you have to embrace your suck. Like, is your suck going to be the copier ran out of paper, or is it going to be the workout that you go complete after work? Is it going to be going to Killington and going to all the different like big mountains in Spartan, like Palmerton?
It shifts your perspective, right, on what is hard. I mean, you just mentioned two of them that I've done that I think Killington may be the hardest race I've ever done. I just did Big Bear in the national series last weekend or couple of weekends ago. That's a pretty close second. Abu Dhabi, I did the first year the World Championship was there, and that was hard for a different reason. Like running in sand is just brutal, but it shifts, right? What you do is, suffering in a good way through these races, like it makes everything else on a daily basis, at least it has for me, and it sounds like for you, it sort of brings it down a notch of like what's truly hard or what's worth getting upset about or what's going to throw you for a loop. And I think that's a gift of this sport, to be honest. I think it's no accident, right, that obstacles are a metaphor for life, right? And so the obstacles we find on the course and what we have to all dig deep into ourselves to find in order to finish them when we're tired and we're hungry and we're thirsty and we bruised ourselves, like that then carries forward into the rest of your life. And I'm sure you find that potentially in the classroom.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I find too, like nothing is too hard. I always tell people like, I have my students for 180 days. I'm like, I can do anything for 180 days. Like, just like when racing, like I can do anything for 13 miles. I can do anything for 3 miles.
100%. I love that perspective, right? I mean, even the heavy carries, when you see people with the bucket carries and the sandbag carries, you see people all body shapes and sizes and one foot in front of the other. They're not even sure completely when it's going to be over, but like the willpower it takes just to sustain and do that, like what an incredible thing, and people cheering each other on. So yeah, you think when you can get through that and your legs are shaking, you can get through, right? What you said, the number of days teaching, I can get through if I've got a really difficult story or a horrible project coming up in work, I'm like, I can get through that because I can get through a heavy carry.
Exactly. But I'm like you, I like the heavy carries. I'm like, this is great. Let me just.
Yeah, I do too, right? You don't have to be the fastest. You don't have to be the strongest. You just have to kind of grit it out.
Yes, exactly. Going back to some notes that I wrote about your book, you talk about how you had to change your mindset on workouts. Workouts had to be something that you worked around and not put aside. What was that shifting kind of like for you? Was it something that you just overnight, you decided that working out was going to be the priority, or was it a slow process?
So, if this were the movie version of our conversation, right, I would have had that moment waking up after that dinner party, hit the Google thing, dropped on Spartan Race Rocky music or Lady Gaga version of Rocky music, or Beyonce would start playing in the background and I'd be like disciplined and off and running. Wasn't like, I'm a real person like you and most everybody listening to this. And the truth of the matter is I had to find a way to work this into an already very busy and full life. And prior to obstacle course racing, exercise was really not a priority for me. It's not that I didn't do it. Like I kind of did it enough to justify my gym membership, right? And not feel too guilty about it when I lived in New York City, or, when I live out in the country, right? When it felt nice to go for a run along the river because it was a beautiful fall day. But over time, as I wanted to get better at the sport, and I wanted not to hurt so much, right? And then when I started competing in my age group and I really wanted to see what I could do, as you said, Caitlin, my training became as non-negotiable to me as brushing my teeth or getting up in the morning and making a cup of coffee. Even if I've got, I had to get from the Hudson Valley into the city today, which is a, hour and a half, 2 hour commute. And even before I did that, I had all these things to do today. I got up an hour earlier so I could get my 60-minute run in, right? That's on my training schedule. It's not going to not happen unless I'm really sick or there's some huge major life event. And I think when you are training for anything, like having the core fundamental parts of it become non-negotiable is really important. And I think that's what you're getting at.
Absolutely. Yes. When I was reading that, the summer is coming. I'm like, I can't wait. But then I'm like, I like having that mindset of like, I have to work. I get to work out, but it needs to be a part of my schedule that like, it's the non-negotiable. It's something that regardless of the weather, regardless of how I'm feeling, unless I'm like critically ill, I'm going to go and get my workout done.
Totally. And, look, we say this and everybody think it's not easy, right? I mean, it's not like, I don't know about you, but I wake up, I'm in my warm bed, it's raining outside. Like I also feel like I want to roll over and go to sleep, right? Like I, at one point, started leaving my running shoes out where I could see them when I woke up. So it would be this motivation to get myself out of bed and to go and run. And, I think it's one of those things where over time you have that discipline to do it, but that doesn't mean that it's not still hard sometimes, right? Like, and it doesn't mean you don't have workouts that aren't awful. Sometimes that happens too. You got to keep plugging through when you hit those dips and those plateaus.
Absolutely. And then something else that you talked about in the book was in order to have time to prioritize workouts, you had to start saying no to people to better prioritize. You kept referring to it as your crop, which I really liked. That's a hard change. I'm a people pleaser. I like to say yes. Like, was that a hard thing for you to do?
It was in the beginning. I'll be super honest. I wish I could say like, hey, I snapped my fingers and saying no to everything was, a cakewalk. But I liked a lot of, and by saying no, like these were saying no to dinner invitations of people who are kind of friends, but not close friends, right? Things that might have been fun, but then I wasn't going to necessarily be able to train the next day. It was saying no to myself about kind of, oh, I'll just jump on Instagram and kind of go like this and spend some time. And there went 10 minutes that if I bucketed it with another 10 minutes and another 10 minutes, I had time to get a quick workout in between meetings, right? It was just a lot of these things we find ourselves saying yes to, but they don't necessarily at the end of the day add up to anything that we look back on and are very meaningful. And so, you talk about the crop. I was driving down on the coast of North Carolina, and as you know, because you very carefully read the book, I saw this farmer on his tractor, and I had pulled over literally to text somebody back at work, and I was like waiting for their reply, and I was just watching him. He's like, hand on the wheel, and he wasn't looking at his phone, and he wasn't like scrolling through Facebook. He was just like, I'm on these rows and I got to stay on these rows because if I don't, my crop dies. And I'm like, so what's my crop? It's going to be my family, my health, obviously earning a living, and obstacle course racing. And everything else is kind of tangential to that. So if it's not really feeding into one of those things and lifting those things up, I can say no to it. I can say no in a nice way.
Right.
And I did. It was hard. But you know what? People respect it, to be honest. Like they start to understand. And I feel like once you do it a few times, then it becomes easier. I don't know how you've handled it in your life, but maybe you felt the same way.
Sometimes I still will find myself, or like a lot of times I'll be like the side of me that wants to go out and have fun will like make the plans. And then when it's like the Friday night, I'm like, oh, why?
Why did I do? Why? Right? Why? Yeah, I have a lot less of those why moments. Now, I still look, I think it's important to have a community, and I think it is important to have friends. I don't think it's particularly healthy to be alone. And so, but I think we know, maybe we have just a circle that's kind of too big, and there's just, I tried to really just pare down and, go to things that were truly meaningful to me, and to stop wasting just little bits of time during the day. Like every time I thought, oh, I need something on Amazon, right? I stopped doing that. I would bucket it until Friday. And all of those little, I call them time slice sucks, right? These little things that suck up slices of our time. When you start to add them together, you actually get real chunks of time to do something meaningful. So instead of going to bed and looking, just at random things on the internet, I would watch recaps of some of the national series or world championship Spartan races and watch the elites. I would see how Ryan Atkins or Lindsey Dawn Webster or Faye Stenning would approach an obstacle. What's Nicole Miracle doing for grip? What are they doing when they enter the water? I mean, I'm throwing out a bunch of names of elite obstacle racers. I think your audience will probably know many of them. But I learned that's what I did for entertainment, so to speak, and it made me better at the sport.
Yes, absolutely. You talk about also in your book that your wife, Lisa, is not an obstacle course racer. And you have these two things stick out of my mind when she asks if you can go on a vacation that is not OCR related. Because that's something that Mike and I have that same problem. He'll be like, oh, let's go here. There's a Spartan racer. We went to Palmerton last summer and we're big fans of The Office. So we turned it into doing things in Scranton too, but it was and then the other moment was when the UPS guy delivered your pull-up bar. Obviously she is patient and accepting of your sport and your crop, but how does OCR impacted your marriage and not only your relationship with her, but your relationship with others?
Yeah. So, I am very lucky that the people in my life went on this journey, both, my spouse, Lisa, and also just my friends and even my parents. They went on this journey with me, and I didn't do a very good job of explaining why I was going down this rabbit hole of racing. I did that one race, and then I really dove in. I went down the rabbit hole, and I wasn't really talking to people about why I needed to do this so much. And honestly, Caitlin, I'm not even sure if I understood it until I sat down to really put my thoughts into this book, because it wasn't like I thought, oh, I'm going to write a book about obstacle course racing. I had this whole journey, and then it became a book later. So I hadn't crystallized my thinking on it about, oh, I was a little girl who, got held up by the throats in the locker and was last picked for teams. Like, I crave being strong. And so I'm putting some of those demons of my youth to rest. I didn't talk about it enough. And so, things would happen like you alluded to. First of all, like where we're going to go on vacation. I increasingly would be like, well, let's try and do it in Nashville. Let's do it near Palmerton. Let's do it near Big Bear. Like some places like Lake Tahoe. Okay, great. She's all in,
Right.
San Luis Obispo, but then there were other venues. Ohio is an amazing place. I love going there. But the third time I was like, let's go to Ohio, West Virginia. She's like, can we mix it up a little bit? So that's where I had to learn to sort of try to make some concessions and to pivot. And I'm very grateful for her for sticking with it. But look, she also, I had been trying to, pull-ups are one of the best things you can do, as from training yourself. And I had been trained on this little bar that I hung in a door frame in our house. And I just decided I need a real pull-up bar in our garage and we need to transform it into a gym. And I just ordered this enormous contraption from Rogue Fitness. And I didn't say anything. I don't know whether I didn't say anything because I actually forgot, or if the truth is I just didn't want her to say no, we can't have this thing. Mm-hmm. Nevertheless, it arrived and she just she was heading to work and gave me this look like, what? And, I'm very it's a very amazing partner that you have who's not into obstacle racing themselves, who will allow you to have that in the garage, allow you to have a spear throw stand in your backyard and a climbing rope, right? That's somebody who is letting you be yourself. And I hope everybody can find somebody like that out there. And the onus is on me, right, to make sure I'm giving back in the same ways to the people who are around me. Maybe it's different. I mean, you said it's a little bit the same for you guys with the vacations, but he does love the sport too. So that probably helps in some ways.
I think his love for the sport, he's somebody that's let's go to this race. If we could, I think we would drain our bank accounts and spend every single weekend at OCR. And I'm more like, but I want to sit on a beach and I want to relax.
Yeah, I know. You say this and I'm like, I've convinced Lisa to go to Sparta in November for the Trifecta World Championship.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So, but I think I get a little bit of a pass because it's Greece and we can go see other.
Have you been to Greece before?
So we went actually a couple of months ago just to take her mother there because my father-in-law died about a year ago and we promised her in a year we'd take her to Greece. So we just went and it was incredible. So I'm actually excited to go back and I hope she is too.
I'm sure she is.
Yeah.
So you even talked about this a little bit. Sorry, my notes are all over the place.
Yeah, all good.
You talk about the decision to seek professional help with your mental health. And I loved your analogy that it was kind of like having a scratch on your brain and how if you could get out of bed in the morning, put on your shoes, walk into the basement, go on your bike, you knew that you could conquer things. But what I feel like we're in a world where mental health help is becoming more recognizable. Insurances are doing a better job of covering it. What kind of advice or what's something you would want people know who might be struggling with those traumas of their childhood and now moving into adulthood?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the catalyst for me was I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of skin cancer called melanoma, which can be particularly deadly. I was very, very lucky and that they caught it early. And I was able to go into surgery and they took out a, 4-inch long chunk in my leg. And so far, 5 years later, I have not had another reoccurrence. But that moment was really the first time I thought about death and leaving this earth in a very specific and a profound way, even more so, I think, than September 11th and what happened then. And the notion that I was going to have, I am a type A person, right? The notion that I would have no say, right, when that time was going to come and that something can come out of the blue and just disrupt everything. I'm sure so many people listening to this have probably felt this in their own lives with the health diagnosis of their own or somebody that they love or just anything that disrupts your world in this profound way that is out of your control. It really shook me to my core, and I had never had any experience with anxiety or anything along those lines, but it triggered that in me. And I really I wanted to figure out how to get through that. I didn't think of it as trauma with a capital T, but it was a little t. And the truth of the matter is, Caitlin, I don't know if I was just getting started in obstacle course racing. And I don't know if I hadn't had that to think about the future of that, of how to wrest control of my body back. I mean, you feel pretty in control of your body when you are on an obstacle race course. You are making the decisions. It would have been a much harder, I think, nut for me to crack in terms of working through that. And I remember being in the hospital after my surgery for melanoma, and I'd only raced 2 Spartan races at this point, but they brought me a wheelchair and I was still loopy in anesthesia and they wanted to wheel me out of the hospital. And I remember just in my anesthesia, standing up and just saying I'm not going to get in the wheelchair. I'm a Spartan. A Spartan would walk out of the hospital. After 2 races, this was already in me, right? And I did. But I think there's something to that, right? That I had an identity that could transcend what was happening with me. But more broadly with people with emotional health, mental health, I think it's got to be a pillar of our fitness, quite frankly. I think I see a lot more men and women of all ages talking about it and their experiences and how they, work through it. And I think it's something you have to keep as in shape and pay as much attention to as hydration, as in your respiratory fitness or your muscle mass, right? And so I've learned that, and that's been incredibly important. I want to encourage other people to think about it and talk about it and be open about it and to pay attention to it. And, nobody, we're all in this together. And there's not one person you probably meet who isn't struggling with something in some way. And we should all just know that and be just a little more gracious, a little more kind and patient. That's kind of my take.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. And I feel like we're not immune to struggle. We're not immune to anxiety. There are things out there, like you were saying, that can something triggers something in your brain and it just changes the way that your brain is processing information or processing how it's feeling.
Yeah. And you referenced that term, a scratch on the brain. I read that from an Olympic athlete, Alexi Pappas. She wrote about that in her book, Bravey. And I heard it took a long time for me to hear something that made sense for me about kind of what happened after I was diagnosed. And I was like, oh, I get it. It's an injury. Injuries happen, they can heal, they can get better, you can get stronger. And so that metaphor, resonated with me, and it felt like something I could do something about, and something where, maybe I didn't have 100% control, but I have some control, right? We have decisions about what we eat, whether we put on sunscreen, how much alcohol we drink, do we get up and work out? Those are choices. They're no guarantees, but we can make choices.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree. Switching it up a little bit. So when I was first reading your book, I was like, oh, this is so cool because you got to meet Faye Stenning, and I saw Faye Stenning works at the OCR Report, which is our umbrella company. And I saw that they're also doing a little giveaway or promotion with your book.
Yes.
So that's so cool that one of the first athletes you recognized, Faye, is now doing the Do It From Anywhere workout. But then I later learned she's also your coach.
Yes.
Which is incredible. But what is that emotion that you must feel knowing that Faye Stenning was the first elite athlete you were able to recognize, and now she's not only your coach, but she's helping you along the book journey?
So today's a pretty pivotal day for me. I'm in the publishing house, Penguin Random House, that published my book. I just got the hard copies, which are, sitting behind me. I've got my first one right here.
Oh
so there's I am looking at this, and, from that first morning I woke up and didn't even know how to do a bear crawl, much less what you say OCR. I wouldn't have even known I would have thought it was a medical condition. I wouldn't have known what OCR was, to now having done 50 races, having met Faye Stenning, like who I saw in one of the national series races in Jacksonville in 2019, thought she was like the coolest person I'd ever seen, how she like jumped over the starting wall. And I tried to like emulate her and I just couldn't. And, to get to the point where I had a race in New Jersey and I had a DNF because I was so cold and wet after the race. And I woke up the next day. I could have quit OCR, but instead I found Faye. And I got Faye to be my coach with her partner, Jessica O'Connell, who's an Olympian in Canada, an Olympic runner. And, that I am now there and that this book is out and you and I are having this conversation. This is a metaphor for this is the kind of thing where this didn't just this happened because, right, I embraced something hard and new and I stuck with it. And I think anyone, and there's a reason I named the book Not Too Late, but there's anyone who at any point in time in their life, no matter what their age, thinks they can't do something or they're not going to be something or it's too I encourage them to sort of add the word yet to the end of it. Like, I'm not an athlete yet. I'm not a painter yet. I'm not a teacher yet. Like all of these things, if you just switch your thinking, and that's really what it was for me. And you just keep on grinding it out and you eventually will end up, I think somewhere better. And I'm like, it's a privilege to be sitting here talking to you about this sport that I now think is the most beautiful, if brutal, sport in the world. And I think it is a sport that prepares us all for aging better, longevity. Like we have to be mobile to get down under that barbed wire. We have to be strong to lift the sandbag. Well, do you know how many people can't put their own suitcase into the overhead bin on an airplane, right? I mean, you're always having to probably help them. So, just those things, I think that helps us be fit for life and all of life's tasks. So again, it's kind of wild that you've asked that question. And I think, boy, I had never run a race. I met Faye. Faye's my coach. We've got a book. I'm talking to Caitlin. It's a gift.
It's like I always think of the analogy, you throw one pebble into a pond, you get the ripples, and it doesn't just ripple once, it just continuously ripples until it reaches the shore.
Yeah, I love that metaphor. That's a great one.
Oh, thank you. I can't take credit. So I heard somebody say it once, but
you applied it to this circumstance, and it's well put.
Absolutely. And just the community of OCR, I think that's what makes the sport so great. I know, you were talking about, was it Big Bear where Faye DNF'd?
Oh, that was in Tahoe. That was Tahoe in the World Championship, and she didn't DNF because she wasn't fit. She DNF'd because they had snow and ice, and she hadn't prepared her clothing. She'll tell you that I think she borrowed a jacket from Robert Killian, who I think won that year, and she was wearing his, but she didn't have the right clothing. Right. And we had a cold water swim. People were dropping out left and right. And the only reason I finished was because I had just literally been studying the temperatures and planning my gear religiously up until that moment. And I had
mitts.
Yeah, I had my bleg mitts. I had everything, right? I had my frog skin neoprene socks and pants. And so, but the community, as I think you were about to say, that's been, you know this as much as anybody, but that's what is part of why you keep coming back. And I'll tell you something, the graciousness of people, the generosity of other racers. The women that I compete against in my age group have taught me so much. Particularly when they're being faster and they're more proficient. They've given me tips about obstacles. I talk about some of them in the race. Just watching these elite racers and videos, they spend so much time talking and dissecting what they do on podcasts like yours. That's just an incredible asset out there for anyone who wants to learn the sport.
Absolutely. I was going to say, too, the fact that Faye DNF'd and still called you to see how your race was and started the phone call, prepping. If you DNF, that's okay. And you were actually, I finished.
Yeah. That's a class act. And that's also somebody who knows, she's diversified herself, right? Yes, Faye is an elite athlete. She is among some of the best Spartan racers that have ever been out there. But Faye also built her coaching business, right? She diversified what she was doing and giving back and how she was what she was putting into the world. She's now given birth. She's a mom, right? And so I really admired that she called and like talked to all of her racers that day on a day that she could have just as an elite athlete wanted to just go curl up and just wallow in her own misery. And she didn't, right? And that's amazing to me. And one of the reasons I love having Faye as a coach is because I've always thought she is somebody who has, again, she has many facets to herself, right? She's just not all OCR, not all racing. And I'm not saying that's bad if you are, but for me, I identified with that more.
Absolutely. And then even your story where like Kelly Schweihart reached out to, or DM'd you or emailed you after you DNF'd in Jersey. Like, it truly is just the best community. And I think the people inside the sport know how great it is. I think it's the outside people that we need to be like, yes, you can do an OCR. Yes, you get this cool medal. But like, think of the community that you will grow and develop within yourself.
I think there's like Callie Schweikart has been one of my greatest mentors. I mean, I'm old enough to probably be her mother, if I got started really early. And, she lived in my town and I used to like see her running at the local high school track and I would like try to chase her around the track and she'd like let me follow around like a little colt following and then she'd just take off, but I learned so much and she was so gracious to me after my first DNF but she became like a mentor to me. And I think this idea of like reverse mentorship is really important. Like younger people have a lot to teach older people, just as older people have to teach younger people. And I think this sport is really great about that. And I would say to anybody who's an age group racer, where I am, if you can surround yourself also with some of these younger races, like you can learn a lot from them. And I think Faye, if you asked her, she'd probably say she learned from me about preparation after that Lake Tahoe race, right? That there's no shame in being ready and prepared. So, I love it. And I'm glad you brought up the community again.
Absolutely. And then what does it mean for you to have not only Lisa, but your parents at your races? I'm also somebody that is I like to call myself a long distance daughter. My family is still in New Jersey. I live in Massachusetts. Yeah. But like, what kind of motivation does that give you?
So first of all, let's just be super honest about it. It's not that fun to be a spectator at these races, right? It's not that comfortable. The music's really loud. So when anybody comes out to cheer you on and gives up that much time of their day, they're sitting maybe in the heat and they're waiting hours for you to come through. Like that's a gift. And, if you're racing, like having people there cheering you on is a big thing to be appreciative of.
And they can't always see much. Sometimes racing, right? Unless you see like fire start line.
Look, my parents have come to a couple of races in Asheville with me, North Carolina, near Asheville, and also New York. And the first time I had to do the multi-rig in front of my mom and dad, I was so nervous, right? Like you think you're not, but it actually was good because I sure didn't want to like fall off in front of my dad. And I don't know if you remember this in the book, but my father, so I got to I think it's Tryon Equestrian Center where Spartan has a race in North Carolina. And this is a couple of years ago. My dad was 76 at the time. And he was watching me warm up before I took off in the age group heat. I looked at him. He was just studying those obstacles. And he's in pretty good shape. And I said, Dad, do you want to go race in the open heat with me when I'm done? And he's like, yeah, I think we should do that. And then he's like, but don't tell your mother until we're done, right?
Yeah, and then he went like he was in a polo, right? So he
was like in a pink polo shirt that she had put him in. So he went and got a Spartan t-shirt and he did the open race with me. And he was amazing. Like he crushed the Herc hoist. Like he's so strong from everything he does outside on their property. He's a veterinarian, but he's retired. And he was climbing up one hill and there were a bunch of 20 something guys just whining about the heat. And I finally looked at him, I said, hey, look, my dad's 76. And they're like, oh,
Right.
So I loved, and he sleeps with his finisher medal beside his bed.
Oh, I love that.
Awesome.
That's also like you were talking about Paula Chans and Muddy Mildred,
yes.
Mildred, yes. And like those are just role models, whether you're 25, you're 40, you're 60, you're 70, you're 80, like just go out and try and like try your best. Even like I'm somebody that I don't like to do things I'm bad at. Like I like to be successful, but like you won't know until you try.
Yeah, two things there. So you mentioned, I think it's Paul LaChance and a woman named Mildred Wilson. They call her Muddy Mildred. Both of them in their 80s and have done and are doing obstacle course racing. And so, like, again, if you think you're too old for it, right? I mean, they will prove you wrong, and they're doing it like they train for it, right? Mildred, like, she trained, she went and got a trainer and she got herself ready, and she's grinning and she has this like will to live written all over her face. But I love what you said, Caitlin, about like, you like to look competent. You like to do things you're good at, like we all do. And as you age, you start to just, again, really lean into only doing the things that you're competent at. And it's kind of like a trap, like a competency trap. And I have a chapter in the book where I talk about you need to be content to look foolish if you want to get better at something. And that's something we all just need to like learn to live with, because you're never going to push yourself out of your comfort zone, right? Oh my God, if I had let looking stupid, stop me from obstacle, I wouldn't have gotten past the first couple of months. Like the spears, like when I would practice them, like they would hit everything, pine trees, curbs. I fell off a rope more times than I can even count, right? I just remember not being strong enough to do half these obstacles. It took me 18 months to get strong enough to do this obstacle called the 8-foot box, where you have to, your listeners probably know, but it's a big cube and you have to get yourself up by a rope. So yeah, I looked pretty dumb. And yet, I've now gone from placing almost last in Jacksonville in that race where I first saw Faye to I actually took first place in the Jacksonville National Series for my age group this year. And then I took first place in my age group at Big Bear. Like it won't happen all the time, but like that's a journey. And it only happened because I was willing to look dumb for a long time.
Yes. And not only did you finish first, you stopped to show a dead worm some compassion on your way, which I absolutely loved.
Yeah, that's a different race. That was the first time I ever got a gold medal. I think that was in Ohio right after COVID. And I remember, it's funny. So I'm like, I was in this like zone. I think I was in flow, like this zone for the first time ever in a race. And I'm like running and I'm like, I'm in the lead. And then I see this poor earthworm like in the path. I'm like, oh, I'm the daughter of a vet. I have to stop and move the earthworm. And like literally in my head, because she wasn't there, I could hear Faye. Like Faye does not mince words, if you know Faye Stenning, screaming in my head, like, what the are you doing? Like, you were in first place for the first time in your life and you're saving an earthworm. Move. So I like got on and finished the race. But yeah, what a long journey and a change from the start to the finish, metaphorically speaking.
Absolutely. And how important do you think it is to have a wide variety of athletes represented at Spartan races? I know, like, Spartan Race, Tough Mudder, like, you look on their Instagram or their social media and it's always these like jacked people. They're ripped and they're so muscular, but like we know the realities of a Spartan race start line. Like, but how important do you think that representation is for people?
You mean just in terms of not the different types of athletes, but like just who the people are who are coming out to the events?
Yes.
So
talk about like the 80-year-olds, but like,
yeah. Well, first of all, like open races, which are the non-competitive heats, that's where most of the racers are, right? Like that's the majority of racers, at least in Spartan racing. And the truth of the matter is, I'll tell you what my favorite thing to do at a race is to be done with a competitive heat and then just to kind of go back out in the open and to find people who it's their first time and to be with them. Maybe they're not racing with anybody. Maybe they are, maybe they got left behind, but to like race for a little while with them, to help get them to a wall, like to help them get over a wall, to help them with to watch that look on their face the first time, they do something they didn't think they could do, to remember what that felt like for myself. I think having people look, the elite athletes get most of the attention, of course, like that makes sense. But I think there's so many people like me who are out there really, that is the majority of the sport. And there are incredible stories in so many people's journeys. And again, just this being with somebody during an open race and watching them experience these firsts, it's just, honestly, it's my favorite part about racing, to be frank with you.
Absolutely. And I know I recently saw something that was like, it was like, go run a marathon, it will change your life, but go spectate at a marathon and that will change your life even more. And I was just, It's so true. Like you can be the best of the best, but in order to give back to help that community and help people over their own obstacles is something that I think that's what's most important.
Yeah, I mean, we think about, the word impossible, and other writers have talked about this, but there's impossible with a capital I and impossible with a little I, right? And there are people who do these impossible with a capital I feats, right? Who break records in the marathon or in the mile. Again, I think about some of the things that I have seen a Ryan Atkins or a Lindsay Dawn Webster, like those are really worth celebrating. I think some of these start to go toward the impossible with a capital I. The woman who just was the first finisher of the Barkley Marathons, which is a hardcore, brutal race. Google Barkley Marathons if you haven't heard of it. And I think that's just incredible. But then there's, the things we all need to do with the impossible with a little I in our own lives, right? Maybe we're not breaking records, but we're pushing and breaking the records we actually thought for ourselves. And that change can have a ripple effect, as you said, about the pond, like throughout the rest of your life. And so I do think celebrating the stories and lifting up the stories of other people is, I think it's a good nod and a tribute to the sport to do that.
Absolutely. We are closing up on our interview. I do have a couple of more questions for you. But before this, I have to talk about your dog, Dolly, passing away in this story. I don't know if you're aware, there's a website called doesthedogdie.com, and it's, you type in the movie you're watching and it will tell you like the end of the dog, like do they live, or do you have to watch a heart-wrenching moment? I actually had to stop reading. I had tears pouring out of my eyes. I grew up with a golden retriever that we had to put down due to cancer. My parents still have golden retrievers like in their home, and Dolly's passing devastated me. How did you find the courage to write such a vivid story about her life?
So, had a little time in between it, but I hope, right? You never know, but you just talking about her, it honors her, right? I mean, absolutely. I think pets can be like children. And what was the name of your golden who died that you were so close to?
His name was Domer.
Okay. So you're talking to me, a person who was a stranger until a little while ago, about Domer, right? This is how much animals can resonate and just be such a part of our life. And she was so brave through her treatment of cancer. She was like one of those like dogs. I feel like, their soul is a part of your own soul. And I wanted to be able to honor her, but she was also a part of my journey in racing, right? Like once she died, that's when I finally was like, now what do I do? I've been taking care of her for so long. Like and that's when I finally went to an obstacle course racing gym and got like somebody to train me. I had this big void in my life. And there is still not a single race I have run where her dog tag has not been tucked into the back of my running pants. Every single, like 50 races now, I have carried that with me, and I will. And so anybody who's had a pet they loved, I think will understand, and they will also understand if they read the book, and I hope they do, why you put the book down during some of those moments, because the passing of a creature you love, it's like nothing else in many ways.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mike came down. He's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "The dog." I'm like, "The dog." She didn't make it. He's like, "Are you gonna stop reading the book?" I'm like, I had to like walk away. I made myself dinner, and then I went back to it. But I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I don't even know this dog.
Yeah. Well, but look, you love animals. Golden retrievers, and look, it's as I said in the book, I don't even know how, if you have people who have sick children, I don't even know how they can bear it, because bearing it with a pet is so brutal. But we're all, if we have pets and they outlet, like we're going to have grief about it. And I didn't think I would ever get another dog, but I do have one now, and I love him to death. Very different dog, but that's okay.
I know. I saw it wasn't a golden retriever, and I was like, oh no.
Yeah, yeah. It's not that I wouldn't have another one. I got a smaller dog because I wanted to be able to. I hated leaving Dolly when when I raced. And so this little dog is like 20 pounds and he can come with us. So he just rides with us on the plane and he gets to go to races. And he actually stood on the podium with me in Fayetteville. So I loved that though. So that's the upside of having a smaller one.
And think of the world that you'll be able to show your new dog. And we have a cat that he goes in our little backpack and we call him like our adventure kitty. And I'm just like, for so much of their life, they're confined between the walls of a home or a backyard. And I'm like, I think that they get to go on the adventures with us makes it like, I don't know. I just feel like that has to enrich their lives somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know if it actually does.
Well, it's funny, and I can't believe I'm going to confess this, but I'm going to. You were asking me about like negotiations in a marriage around obstacle course racing. So I literally asked Lisa if we could name our dog Aru, Aru, like the Spartan. She's like, no. So that is not. But he's a sweetheart, and and he's a Spartan dog himself. He hikes and runs with me. He's very, very strong.
I love that.
Yeah,
that's awesome. And then another theme of your book, let's end this on a more positive note. You talk about the bridges of songs and how the bridge of a song is like the turning point of the song. Do you have a song bridge that you just like, you think like, this is the one, this is the best bridge out there?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. And I don't have one off the top of my head that I think is the best one. There was the one in the book that really was the catalyst for me to think about the bridge as being this sort of turning point in our life where we connect what came before with what comes after. So the bridge is the part of the song where you have a different beat, a new tempo. The song sounds a little different. And there's this song, Summertime by Kenny Chesney, that I heard in a car with Lisa. And Lisa explained to me, she's like, great bridge. I'm like, what's a bridge? What do you mean, what's a bridge? And she explains that to me. So in some ways, because that's where I first heard about what a bridge is, that bridge in the Kenny Chesney song is quite powerful. And I think it goes, the more things change, the more they stay the same. It's pretty true and great line. But I would want to, like, before I would actually declare a definitive best bridge in the world, I'm going to think about it, Caitlin, and I'm going to DM you or email you what that is. But I think everybody should have a favorite bridge. I like that. Like, that should be a new question you ask everybody on a show. And then also just think about what is the bridge you're going to write in your life, right? What is the thing that carries you from this stage in your life to the next? And that's what obstacle course racing has been for me, right? So I appreciate your bringing that up. That's a question I haven't been asked yet about the book. So kudos to you.
I thought of it last night and I was like, oh, I should have an answer to give Wendy a time to think. And then I still have not come up with my answer.
Yeah. You don't have one for yourself either, right?
No, I don't, because
it's a big question. This is a weighty question.
Yes, and there's so much music. I am a big Taylor Swift fan, but I'm I also my absolute favorite song is Vienna by Billy Joel. So I'm like, do I go back to that? But that bridge,
and that's the one where he says Vienna waits for you, right?
Yeah.
I love that song too. I think about that. It's interesting. You and I have a lot of the same favorite stuff. So I actually have a playlist that I did for the book that's on Spotify that people can find on my website, which is just my name, gwendolynbounds.com. And you can go to the playlist. And that's also the place where you mentioned with Faye, we have a giveaway with Faye, a workout that she designed for people who are early, who buy the book, pre-order the book before June 18th. You also can get a discount from VJ Shoes.
Yes, I saw that.
And a discount on training with Faye if you want. But I love the Spotify playlist is on that. So I'd like to hear what you think of it. And then maybe you can suggest some other songs.
Absolutely. I will. It's funny. Going back to Vienna, Mike and I are planning our honeymoon and we're going to hopefully Italy and France. And I'm like, Vienna is only a 6-hour drive. I'm like, we could spend 10 minutes listening to a Billy Joel song and leave. And he's like, are you kidding me?
No, if you have to go to Palmerton, he has to go to Vienna.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Oh, so that's just non-negotiable at this point.
No, I'm gonna have to bring that up as soon as we get off this call. I'm gonna go remind him that we need to go to Vienna. So my absolute last question for you is, now that the book is not published, but you have submitted your final copies, I see it back in your background, it's bookbind, it's ready to go. How does it feel about it being released into the public?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have children, so I don't know what giving birth is like, but I have put another book into the public, and there's like this moment where you just let it go. And then the story, you start to meet people, right? Like here I am meeting you. The most incredible thing about writing a book is how many people you get to meet that you wouldn't have talked to otherwise, and the connections. And so that process is just starting right now. I'm not sure when this actually airs, but if it airs before June 18th, right, the book literally ships for anybody who's ordered it or as of June 18th. And, it's a relief. It's nerve-wracking to some degree. And it's just, again, it's like bringing these ideas into the world and then getting to talk about them with people. And there are a few things like it. So I'm very honored to have been able to do it. And it's a privilege to get to talk to you, because you all have done so much with your podcast for the community. And it's just a joy for me to get to talk to you. So thank you. And I only want to be interviewed by school teachers now because they are good readers. That's my new mantra.
I love that. I will spread the word. Yeah, it was just so funny. I had like notes and notes, and he's like, "This isn't a comprehension quiz." I was like, "Oh, right."
Love it. I over prepare, as you know, because of what I did for the Lake Tahoe race. Like when Faye walked in my living room and saw all my gear, because she had come to my house to practice her spear throw, she was like, "Okay, you're like, I know," But right. So I understand the note taking. I understand preparing.
Yes, and I know you said at the end of your book you talked about Tough Mudders and World's Toughest Mudder. Is that something on your horizon? Will we see you at World's Toughest Mudder?
So I would love to do one. I've never done one, right? I've been so focused on Spartan racing. I've done some other local obstacle course races around here. Now that, Callie Schweikart, who we mentioned, I think she was number 2 with World's Toughest recently. And she's just incredible. So I have the appetite to think about doing it. So, not too late.
Nope, it's never too late. So hopefully one year we will see you at World's Toughest Mudder. That's like my husband's absolute favorite race. So
oh, really? Okay, well that's good. That's inspiration right there.
Yes, and I am usually his pit crew, and it's just, whether you're racing or you're pitting, I've never raced in it, but I hear that it's like the best experience for both members of the pit. So
I've heard that as well. I can't imagine what it's like coming to the pit and being that cold and tired and hungry, and you have to get somebody to go back out. I think that's sort of what a wonderful, wonderful, brutal experience, right? And a test of human will. So for that reason, I think it's something I should at least highly consider doing.
Absolutely. My best secret for you, and if Lisa's your pit crew, is like, when I've pitted, it was my husband and 2 of our friends. So we had a pit crew of like 5 or 6 people. Like we were just the pit crew, I think, was having more fun than the athletes, but we didn't have any chairs. So like Mike couldn't come in the pit, and really we had like a cooler he could sit in, and like maybe like a bar stool, but there wasn't any place for him to like sit and get comfortable. He could eat a snack. We would change him. We'd do what he needed to do. And then it was like, bye, like you are out of here. We didn't have a tent. We had no sleeping bags. Like there was no comfort in it.
Okay. Well, now, first of all, thank you. But that's like not the end of it. If I do this, she's going to call you. I'm going to call you. You're going to have to give me any more tips for sure. This will not be the end of this tutorial from my new teacher.
I'm happy to help. A lot of people say don't have like your spouse pit for you, but I think it's the experience that I think you should do together.
Is that because they won't push you hard enough to get back out? Like because they'll feel so bad that you're in so much pain? Like why is that?
No. I don't know. I remember hearing it. I don't remember if it was on Will Hicks's World's Toughest podcast or Matt B. Davis with Obstacle Running Adventure, but somebody was like, we like advise against you not pitting for your spouse. And I was like, I love that. I love being like, bye, I'm gonna go eat some cosmic brownies and you're gonna go suffer.
I like that's good. Well, then you're the right person to have in there. Yeah, I wonder. I don't know. I mean, if she saw me suffering that much and I was saying I want to stop, would she tell me it's okay to stop, or would she? I think Callie, her boyfriend, was like, he had to tell her she has to go back out, and he said how hard it was to tell her that. I remember her and saying that. She's actually flying in from Colorado to come to my book launch party.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, we're going to have a conversation in front of a bunch of folks about it. So yeah, I'll send you an invitation. But she, so, and I remember her saying that, like, he didn't want, so I think the spouse, there's probably something to that. You love somebody so much and they're really suffering, although you've gotten it under control. So good for you.
We also, our other members, we had somebody that we called like the pit boss, and he'd be like, no, you're leaving. Like, yeah, you are leaving. Like, get out of here.
That's what I would need. I would need somebody to like tell me go back. Like, because I don't want to say I wouldn't forgive them if they didn't. Like, in the moment, I'd probably be so grateful they gave me a pass. But boy, if there was any chance I could go out and finish and do more and I didn't do it, I wouldn't feel like I'd wake up like broken hearted the next day. So absolutely. I get that.
Yeah, no, Mike's first year, he got 50 miles and he'll tell you, he's like, I'm slow, but I can suffer. And I'm like, yeah, he just kept you. He moved the full 24 hours. Is that right? Just kept going, and like he walked it. He will be the first one to tell you he walked it, but he got 50 miles. So
no, look, there's honor in walking if you keep moving, right? Like there's honor in just getting through. I think it's an incredible thing to move for 24 hours like that.
Absolutely.
So good for him. And I'm sort of similar to him. I'm not the fastest, but I know how to suffer.
Yep. So hopefully we'll see you. Maybe not this year, but there's next year for World Stuff is Mutter.
Totally. I look forward to it.
Perfect, Wendy. That is all the questions I had for you. Do you have any sponsors or anybody that you'd like to thank before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I'm a journalist, so I haven't accepted money or any products from anybody, right? So I have to I'm very careful about conflicts of interest. But I am appreciative to Faye Stenning for all she has done for me through through Grit Coaching, and I think they're phenomenal. And also look, the folks at VJ Shoes, I went to them for this pre-order bonus discount because I have 8 pairs of their shoes. I've paid for all of them, and I honestly, for me, there's many great shoes out there, but those have been they've kept me from like hurting myself, and so I think they're just incredible folks. So I'd want to say that as well. But I want to thank all of the other racers out there, right? I mean, they truly inspire me, particularly when they pass me. There is there's many of them are mentioned in the book who are just phenomenal humans and phenomenal racers. And I'm just grateful to be able to have this conversation about this sport that we all love. So those are really the people I want to thank the most.
Absolutely. And I totally agree. The people are what definitely make the sport. And then watching those YouTube videos is how people get better. So
yeah. So thank you for everyone who's posted a YouTube video to teach me how to get up the 8-foot box, stairway to Sparta, how to grip monkey bars, right? Like I owe all of you, I owe everybody a drink.
That's going to be a very hefty bar tab.
That's going to be a hefty bar tab, but probably worth it. It's probably worth every last penny to thank all those folks.
Absolutely. Well, Wendy, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and for sending us a copy of your book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I'm actually is your other book, The Chapel on the Hill?
Chapel on the River, that's still available pretty much anywhere online. Books are sold. So speaking of the 9/11 story, since you brought it up, you might enjoy that as well.
Absolutely. And can you just say the name of that book one more time?
Sure. Little Chapel on the River, a pub, a town, and the search for what matters most.
Perfect. I'm going to add it to my audiobook. Is it on? Do you know if it's audiobook too? Perfect.
Yep. I believe so. And if it's not, let me know. If you don't find it, let me know.
I will.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, Wendy, thank you so much. I will let you go. This episode should be up hopefully this weekend, so this way people can continue to pre-order your book. I'm assuming your book is like all the major retail stores.
Yes. Yeah, you can. And again, there's a bunch of them listed on my website, gwendolynbounds.com. But any bookstore online that you go to and frequent, you will probably find it. Just save the order number if you're interested in getting the bonus offer, and you can find details how to access that on my website as well. And I'll send it to you if you want to put it in the show notes.
And I also saw that you recorded the audiobook. So
yes, I did. That is an endurance event in itself to go into a recording booth for 4 days and read like your book. And like, you can't mess up a single word. They have to stop you every single time, 90,000 plus words. So I think I was more exhausted than I am after a beast race, to be honest with you. I'd come home and I'd be like, I can't move. I can't talk. Don't talk to me.
Yeah.
But Caitlin, I'm really glad I read it, because it's a very, it's a personal story. You've read the book, and I can't imagine somebody else. I'm glad that I did it. So if anybody orders the audio version, that's me.
Perfect. I know. I love audiobooks. I love to just put on my headphones, even if I'm just like doing work around the house. So that's how I consume most of my books. But I just listened to the Situation from Jersey Shore, wrote a biography that I wanted to listen to. And having him read it, I feel like I was just more like, oh, that happened to the person that I'm listening to. It reframes it for you, I feel like.
That's a really good way to put it. I've heard people say that about, I feel that way when I listen to audiobooks. I also think when you reread your own book, you relive a piece of your life, right? And I'm not sure anybody else could have the same inflection on words right? I think if I would have listened to somebody else read it, I would have been like, that's not how I meant it, right? That's not the voice I felt. So I think you're right. It's very intimate when you hear somebody read their own stories, and particularly if there's difficulties in that story.
Absolutely. We all have a story to tell. So I was glad that you were able to put yours on paper and then also verbally tell your story out loud as well.
Thank you so much. And thanks for the time. And I'm sure I'll see you, if not at World's Toughest, hopefully before that.
Yes, that would be amazing. So absolutely. I will keep an eye out for you.
Welcome back.
Thank you, Wendy, and good luck with book sales. I really wish I had the chance to talk to you. And just so for a behind-the-scenes look, I don't pawn off interviews to Caitlin that I don't want to do. It's just more of a bandwidth issue for me. So I have Caitlin take 1 out of every 10 or so that I do. And that being said, this is some of the more FOMO I've had with her taking the interview. So thanks to Caitlin also for getting that book done in time.
Yeah, I read, 290 pages?
Yeah.
And I sobbed.
And happy Pride Month too, right?
Yes.
Yeah, sweet. And what else did you say about interest in getting people to read the book?
I just think that if you're somebody that loves adventure or is craving a new path in your life, definitely go pick out Wendy's book. It's going to be an audiobook. She's going to be the one narrating it. She said it's going to be available at all bookstores, Amazon. More importantly, though, if you can, support your local bookstore. Yeah, I look forward to it. I plan to check it out eventually, too. And we were invited to the book release party. It's the same Publishing
weekend.
Party.
Yes, it's the same weekend as City Field, which we will be there covering. But after that, we are going to your family vacation.
Yes.
So we won't be able to make that as of now. That's the plan.
Yes. But seriously, go check it out. I read this book in 48 hours, and I'm not somebody to just sit down and read. But once I started, I could not stop.
And she actually means it when she said that she read the book too. So. Yeah,
no, it was an audiobook. I had the PDF version, so go read it. Also, she's just a genuinely nice person. Yeah, that's one of the things and most people are in this sport, but it was really cool hearing from her. And there's some things that she said that I'm like, oh, I would have wanted to hear more about this and that. I don't know. Hopefully we meet you someday. But for related episodes, episode 269, Heather Golnick on Jacksonville, Spartan Age Group Series, Iron Edge, and more. And I heard that she's a competitor in her age group, right? Mm-hmm. Yep. Also 289, Kelly Schweikart on Utah Spartan Ultra, Disordered Eating, Good Pizza, and more. And I know that she's going to be there at the book signing. She was brought up in the interview. Yes. We mentioned this earlier, but episode 326, Des Linden and her new book, Choosing to Run. And I believe, was Paula Chance brought up in the interview? He was. Paula Chance is also in her book. Awesome. Well, very recently we had him on for episode 376, Paula Chance on 200-plus Spartan races at the age of 82. And actually, Paul, if you're listening, I wore your shirt today on my run, so appreciate that. Links down below, so would you kindly check those out? Subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts. We are on all of the podcast apps and players. Yeah, I need to go back and figure some things out, because I think Apple Podcasts has our show notes all messed up, and I put a lot of time into show notes. I just got them good looking for Overcast, which is what I use. Subscribe and follow us on social media.
You can leave us
We're
a
on
review.
Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Yes, you can leave us a review, but more than anything, if you could just share the show with a friend, get it 2 more ears, that would be huge.
If you feel inclined, please support us on Patreon for as little as $2 or as many as $10. And if you are a Patreon supporter, you get access to our behind-the-scenes Facebook group, which means you would have seen this interview on Tuesday.
Yes. Also, we're going to be doing a May Patreon video, which is going to give a little bit more behind-the-scenes look at some stuff behind the scenes, I guess. I'm going to be making an appearance on another very big obstacle course racing podcast. I don't know when he's going to be releasing it, but it's going to give a little bit more context to that. So yeah, if you want to support us for as little as $2, that's an option there. Coming up next, we're covering the Gaylord Gauntlet, which is in Wallingford, Connecticut. Same place where Bubbles is going to be having his DECA. So I would like to do both somehow. I don't know how we will be able to do both, but that would be great. But the episode will be on Gaylord Gauntlet, and then hopefully we'll be doing some DECA for fun and pain and fun. Caitlin, I have a joke if you have a quote.
I do. My quote is from Mr. Ecker, and it's, "And suddenly you knew it was time to start something new and trust the magic of a new beginning."
Nice. This joke is perfectly timed, and it's appropriate, which is good too. So, a chicken walks into the library and up into the desk. "Book," says the chicken. So the librarian gives him a book. The chicken leaves with the book and returns 5 minutes later. "Book," he says. So the librarian gives him another book.
You need to make the chicken noise different than what you're saying for book.
No. This goes on for about 8 more times until finally the librarian leaves the library and goes outside on a break in his back where there's a pond. The chicken is standing on the edge of the pond, tossing books to a frog on a lily pad. The chicken says, "Book, book," and the frog says, "Read it, read it." Alright, well that just wraps it up. My name is Michael Stefano.
And my name's Caitlin
And
Ritter.
we'll talk to you next weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening.
If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to subscribe to our show and write us a review on your favorite podcast app.
You can also follow us on Instagram and Facebook and connect with us there.
Most importantly, we would appreciate it if you shared an episode with a friend so we can reach more ears.
They continue to effectively shine a light on the people in our sport, as well as the events that we are so passionate about.
Our intro song is Street Crew by Straight Up, and our outro music is Iron Call by The Best.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. You're not Michael Stefano. You're Caitlin, right?
Yes, I'm Mike's wife and co-host.
Yeah. So nice to meet you. I've seen so much of the stuff you guys have done, and I appreciate your having me on. And I'm loving your backdrop. Right? Like,
Thank you.
Yeah. All the podcasts I've been doing, like none of them have like the cool OCR stuff in the background. So this is awesome.
I want to make sure it's recording. It is recording. Nothing would be worse than making you sit through this and then not recording it.
It has happened in the history of mankind for sure, but not for us. It is not going to happen to us today.
It is recording and ready to go.
Awesome, Caitlin.
Before we even get really started, you recently wrote a novel called Not Too Late.
Can you read books on Reddit?
Well, I think Reddit is like, I read it. The frog is acknowledging, like, oh, no, I read it.
I didn't get it.
Yes. Jokes are best when they have to be explained.
Hey, it'd be nice.